Hi, I wanted to share with you another game from the first round of the 2017 Fide Grand Prix tournament. This game is between British GM and longtime number one player Michael Adams with the white pieces versus GM Salem Selah from the United Arab Emirates. And he's, I believe, 24 years old. This was a good game. Let's get right into it. Adams started off with C4, English, C5, symmetrical English. And symmetrical English is good, um, especially if you play the Sicilian defense against E4, because you can get a lot of positions that you are quite familiar with. So knight C3 is D5, and of course, if you play the Sicilian, maybe you're not gonna go into D5 so quickly. You might hold back on that. Perhaps play knight C6 first or something like that, and maybe set up your pawns on E6 and D6. There's many flexible options here. Um, you just play E6 for example, if you are a die-hard Sicilian player. Salem play D5 or theoretical. He takes D5, E3, E6, Bishop C4, Bishop E7, castle, castles, Queen E2. Of course, White is giving up to play D4, Knight C6, D4, and there's the move in the center. And and black has pretty much equalized here, although he has somewhat of a slight cramp in the position. It's not bad. He's pretty much played a Sicilian where he has gotten the D5 advance in already. Usually, if you get that in the Sicilian, you're pretty good to go. Of course, the difference here is that the white pawn is on D4, whereas in the Sicilian you would have a pawn on E4, and this pawn would not be here. So there are some differences, but we can say that black is pretty much equalized, and it's come out of the opening okay. So Salem played C takes D4, E takes D4. This gives white the so-called isolated pawn center, which is not bad for white at all. Uh, Isolated pawns tend to activate uh, the pieces. Okay, by opening the lines rather, white has more attacking possibilities. All right, so he takes on the weakness of having a pawn that only can be defended by pieces, right? But in compensation, he has the potential to gain tremendous activity. Besides the open lines that white achieves, he also has these nice outpost squares that he can use in the future. All right, so that's the reason why players go into isolated pawn positions. They're not just trying to take on a weak pawn for nothing, but there's this balancing act of compensation that goes on. So white has the open lines, it's free piece play, and a nice chance at uh, developing a kingside attack, whereas black will try to use his solid position to blockade this pawn, eventually attack the pieces that are defending the pawn, and judiciously trade down into a superior endgame where we get to a point where only the white king can defend the D pawn, and then black can use that weakness as a decoy uh, to win in the end game. But those things are very far off, and black and white is trying to get an advantage in initiative right now as the middle game arises. So let's see how play went. So knight b6. Of course, one of the strategies is to eliminate pieces for black. White tends to want to keep the pieces on in isolated pawn positions. The black player wants to trade down. Everything is about getting closer and closer to a superior endgame for the defensive side. Bishop d3. Okay, reorientating the piece toward the king side. Notice he allows this pawn to be captured, which Salem does. He doesn't see anything wrong with it. And so now white is down a pawn. Now, what's interesting is I'm always saying in my other videos is you always put position first over material. I got that from Capablanca. You always said material first and position. This is a good game to illustrate that. So we see right now that Salem has taken a pawn on d4, so he's up a pawn. All things being equal, a pawn is enough to win the game. All right, so he's up material, but we have to be able to evaluate, does white have compensation for the material? Let's keep going. So Michael Adams trades knights, and queen takes d4. So far, so good for black. Not only does he win a pawn, but he trades a set of knights, which is good because I told you that black wants to trade down. Okay, so white has gotten rid of the isolated pawn, but he's just down a pawn. All right, now with this queen in the middle, white is going to try to gain time against the black pieces, because if you just lose a pawn for nothing, then you're just down a pawn. So there's some general rules of thumb about the value of a pawn. Some say it's worth 3 tempi, or 3 moves, so to speak, for a sacrifice pawn. So let's see what happens. So queen takes d4. Okay, there was rook d1, so there's one move, right? Because now we have this threat of bishop takes h7. And what do I mean by threat? Well, if white could move again, he would play bishop takes h7, and there would be a discovered attack against the queen on d4. That's one move. So that's a tempo, and black has to deal with that. Okay? There's a second one. g3. Attacks the queen again. Okay? Now this move, g3, isn't too big of a deal, but because you're just making a move in front of the king, and yes, you're creating some space for the king, but I have to give Adams credit here because this move is part of a larger plan, and you'll see that in a few moves. So here's the second tempo. So the queen goes to h3, right? Looks normal. And there's the third move. So now he puts his bishop on a powerful diagonal, making it difficult to develop this bishop, and on c8 that is, and he's threatening to drop the bishop on e4 back to g2. Okay, e5. Salem wants to, activate his pieces, activate his bishop anyway, and there it is, his third tempo. So we can say that white has at least gained 3 tempi for the sacrificed pawn. Okay, and what has he done with the with these moves? Well, he's put his bishop for one on a very powerful diagonal, which makes it difficult for black to develop his remaining queenside pieces. Okay, that's one. The second thing he did was he put his rook on a powerful open file, rook d1. Okay, so all of these moves serve to restrict the black player, right, from completing his development. So we can say that white has definitely made a sound sacrifice of a pawn, a sound positional sacrifice, and that he definitely has compensation for the pawn deficit. And I'm sure this is probably something that Adams analyzed beforehand. Again, the timestamp here, Adams was playing very quickly. At move 16, Adams still had an hour and 44 minutes left on the clock. Salem only had 44 minutes, so he used a great deal of time. A4, of course, continuing the pressure in the position. A5, kicking the knight out because the knight has nowhere to go except here or here. So A5, and A5 is not really a move that black wants to do. He wants to get his pieces out. So this again shows how white is simply dictating the position and has full compensation for the pawn. So now this weakness has been made on A5. He gains another tempo. He gains more time by attacking a completely undefended knight. Knight goes back. Again, this is all bad for Salem, who now has only 16 minutes on his clock. Adams had an hour and 22 minutes here. Why is this bad? Look at all of the development that White has in the position. White is fully developed. Save this rook here on A1. Meanwhile, black's pieces are tripping over themselves trying to get out. The rook, bishop on C8, and knight D7 are all in embarrassing positions. And this queen is suspect too, because the queen can be hit up at any time by a move like bishop E4 or something like that. Okay, so again, material first. Excuse me, I take that back. Position first, material second. And you see that in this game. Black snatched that pawn up and then got in all type of material, positional trouble as a result. And again, look at the board right now. Black is still up a pawn, but it doesn't look like it, does it? Looks like he's down. It looks like he's down material because of his position is so uncoordinated. Let's keep going. Knight D5, another clean. These are clean shots too because black's pieces are not even protected. This is a clean shot. Knight D5, like bam. Knight can go to E7. Knight can go to C7. Okay. Salem drops back to D8. Again, this is all bad news. Rook AC1. And now white is fully developed. Now what do we do when we get fully developed? We attack. Rook AC1. King H8. Again, this is it's time to shake your head because King H8. These are moves you don't want to make. So something is going terribly wrong. But black is trying to hold on. Black is a strong grandmaster, 2650. And black realizes that he's in some trouble. He's probably ran into some preparation. And he's doing his best to try to just hold the position at this point. Queen B5. Just applying more pressure to the position here. There's a great idea behind this move. Okay, so knight F6. So of course, the attack continues. Bishop C5. Just not giving black time to breathe. Rook G8. Again, he doesn't want to be there. Notice how he avoids the trade of knights and he hits the queen. The queen is misplaced somewhat. And now it's difficult to place the queen. Where exactly do you go with the queen? Okay, not only is the queen hit, but now if white wanted, he could take on B7. So he goes to H5. Bishop D6. And if you look at my video on the Maxime Vachier-Lagrave Li Chao game, you see the same themes as far as the grandmasters not being thirsty to collect material. Remember I said bishop B7 was playable. He could have took the pawn. However, he knows this is weak. So there's no need to bother with it. Instead, he increases the dominance of the position. And now he attacks another pawn in the position. See, it's always position first, then material. Don't be so eager to collect, you know. You've worked hard to build your position. Don't be so easy to collect. See if you can further strengthen the position. And what happens, you strengthen the position so much that what happens is that the opponent's position will just fall apart by itself. Knight g4. And now, knight takes g4. Bishop takes g4. Right, a little sigh of relief from Salem. He finally traded something, got his pieces out. And now simply rook e1. So now have to deal with this threat of the rook coming up. Rook a6. And now just simply bishop takes e5. So after all of that, white regains his pawn and has the superior position. Okay, black is extremely discoordinated, uncoordinated rather. So rook b6, queen d5, just centralizing the queen here. And there's some funny tactics with this queen here and this queen here. Say, for instance, the removal of this this bishop, for example, with the move like h3. If we could just dream a little bit and say if this bishop came back here or something, and we can check and then pick up the queen. So Salem gets out of that. He sees what's going on. But trouble finds the queen wherever she goes. Queen goes back. And again, now it's getting more obvious. This idea of a discovery and picking up the queen. So now Salem decides that he's going to play queen h2. But of course, he's just adding more protection to his queen. And the queen really has nowhere to go. So h4. And this is a rough position for black. Look how beautifully centralized all of the white pieces are. b6. Rook b5. And Adams will not be moved off of the 5th rank. Rook e6. And now this gives Adams a chance to do a strong move. He plays queen d2, which is very basic and simple. And now you have the rook, right? A piece of lesser value in opposition to the queen, a piece of higher value. And the threat is bishop g7 check, followed by the kidnapping of the queen after rook takes h5. So f6. And now we see a powerful move from Michael Adams. Because being a strong grandmaster, you know, always in the 2750 range, he is not going to be, easily outplayed with moves like f6. And he just simply plays bishop takes f6. Okay, now it's time to cash in the advantages. And of course, we have the rook here, discovery against the queen. So the only move that can be made really here is, without just outright losing material, is probably bishop takes f6. Slightly better might have been queen e8. But then black is just simply down material after a move like bishop e5. Just down a pawn pretty much for nothing. So he's figured, hey, I might as well take the piece. And he figures after rook takes and this bishop takes. And he's basically saying, show me what you got. So Adams plays rook takes h5. And bishop takes h5 is played. Now, can you see why bishop takes d4 was not played? And this is the vision of the grandmasters. I mean, you don't have to be a grandmaster to see it. But if you're just starting out, or you're not really strong tactically, it's hard to see these things. But there's a mate. If bishop takes d4, then simply rook takes h7 check. And you can see the benefit of having centralized pieces. You also can see the detriment and downside of having the cramped position. The only reason why that combination is possible is because the rook is on g8 and depriving the king of squares. That's the main theme. Anytime you see the king deprive the squares like that, always look for those possibilities, because this is not a natural position for the king to be in. So when you see stuff like that, it just doesn't look right. Your mind should be ringing bells that something's not right. And so Adams just simply snatches the queen off. Salem realizes, hey, I can't take the queen. And so he just captures the rook. Game continued. Queen c4, just getting out of the way of this bishop, attacking this rook. The other rook comes out. And rook e3. And the reason why is because the rook is unprotected here. So he gets here because the idea, of course, is to pile up and at least try to win another piece for black. So rook e3, right, kind of is a form of damage control, so to speak. Okay, gives up a pawn. And now we see the double attack. Actually, let me go back. I said double attack. It's really a triple attack because you have, but I meant double attack on the pieces. But the queen is attacking here. Also, this bishop here. That's the double attack. But then there's also this pawn. Well, actually, the rook is protecting the pawn. So, yeah, it's still a double attack. All right. So, simplification now, Adams is okay with. Rook takes e4. Rook takes e4, and he decides to go with the white bishop. Bishop goes back to f6. And now he threatens the rook, of course, on e8. Excuse me, on e4, and threatens to go to a8. Okay, which will lead to checkmate. So that prevents this move, of course, because queen a8 and bishop takes, bishop d8 and queen d8 will be checkmate. Okay, that's the defense. And again, the same idea. Back rank is a problem. h6. He doesn't play rook d8 because he doesn't want to make his pieces passive. Therefore, he just makes a place for his king to escape, if need be. Gets behind the passed pawn, right? As all the classic manuals say, get rooks and queens, for that matter, belong behind passed pawns. And there it goes, b6, check. Make sure the king will have nothing to do with defense, and also taking control of the next critical square so that the pawn can move forward. b7. Same idea in mind, this time with the attack on the bishop and threatening to promote here. Notice the queen also controls the critical d6 square so that this bishop cannot go here and defend. What else to do? Rook takes b7. Queen takes f8. And here's the last ditch effort to try to promote this guy. However, very strong move here. Of course, he can't push because he just captured the rook. Rook goes to a8. Same idea, queen d5. Again, cannot push. Rook a7. And now the queen gets into the perfect place. It just blocks the pawn. h5. And now the king will come and assist. And black resigned after king c1. The king was going to basically take the place of the duties of the queen, blockading the pawn while the queen picked up some more material. Because the queen is really not not an ideal blockader. It's worth too much to be doing that kind of job. You know, it's like if you had I don't know, like an all-star basketball team. You know how you had LeBron James on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you had him, uh, being an enforcer on the court, like fighting and stuff. Like being a bully. He's too good to do those kind of jobs. So that's the same thing with the queen being a blockader. The queen is too good to be just blockading the A pawn here. So the king was going to go and take over that job and free the queen up to do her more important work. So I hope you learned a lot. That was a good game by Adams. Be careful about pawn snatching in the opening. Sometimes it's not as dramatic as as you see in some of the old games from the 1800s where like your Danish gambits and King's Gambit games where the player gets this immediate monstrous compensation for the pawn. Nowadays, you'll see these positional pawn sacrifices, and you see what happened to Black's position in this game. He really, really got himself into a bind, and eventually that wound up costing him his queen, didn't it? Because the king was stuck on h8 and the rook was on g8, a square it had no business being on. But that was all because of the pressure that Adams was able to generate because Black took that pawn early in the opening. So it seems like Black was just a victim of some preparation there, and it worked out really good, or worked out really good for White. So as usual, please like and subscribe. I hope you learned something. Comments below. I read everything, and I'll see you guys on the next video.